40 The teachings of the Lord of the Second Coming. 1.2 The foundation of substance. Had Cain fulfilled the indemnity condition to remove the fallen nature, God would have gladly accepted his sacrifice. The foundation of substance would then have been laid in Adam's family. How should Cain have made the indemnity condition to remove the fallen nature? The first human ancestors fell by succumbing to the Archangel, from whom they inherited the fallen nature. To remove the fallen nature, a person must make an indemnity condition. In accordance with the principle of restoration through indemnity, by taking a course which reverses the process through which human beings initially acquired the fallen nature. The Archangel fell because he did not love Adam. Rather, he envied Adam, who was receiving more love from God than he. This was the cause of the first primary characteristic of the fallen nature. Failing to take God's standpoint. To remove this characteristic of the fallen nature, Cain, who stood in the Archangel's position, should have taken God's standpoint by loving Abel, who stood in Adam's position. The Archangel fell because he did not respect Adam as God's mediator, and did not receive God's love through him. Rather, he attempted to seize Adam's position. This was the cause of the second primary characteristic of the fallen nature. Leaving one's proper position. To remove this characteristic of the fallen nature, Cain, who stood in the Archangel's position, should have received God's love through Abel, who stood in Adam's position, respecting him as God's mediator. In this way, Cain should have maintained his proper position. The Archangel fell when he claimed dominion over Eve and Adam, who were his rightful lords. This was the cause of the third primary characteristic of the fallen nature reversing dominion. To remove this characteristic of the fallen nature, Cain, who stood in the Archangel's position, should have obediently submitted to Abel, who stood in Adam's position. By accepting Abel's dominion, Cain should have rectified the order of dominion. God told Adam not to eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Adam should have conveyed this will to Eve, who in turn should have conveyed it to the Archangel, thus multiplying goodness. Instead, the Archangel conveyed to Eve his evil will that it was permissible to eat of the fruit. Eve in turn conveyed this evil will to Adam and led him to fall. This was the cause of the fourth primary characteristic of the fallen nature multiplying evil. To remove this characteristic of the fallen nature, Cain, who stood in the Archangel's position, should have been receptive to the intentions of Abel, who stood closer to God and learned God's will from him. Thus, Cain should have made a foundation to multiply goodness. There are many instances in human life which correspond to the situation of Cain and Abel. When we look within ourselves, we find that our innermost mind delights in the law of God. 14 It is in the position of Abel, while our body, which serves the law of sin, 15, is in the position of Cain. We can become good only if our body obediently follows our mind, which directs us toward goodness. All too often, however, our body rebels against the mind's directions, repeating by analogy Cain's murder of Abel. This is how evil grows within us. For this reason, the religious way of life requires that we make our body submit to the commands of our higher mind, just as Cain should have submitted to Abel and followed him. We can also see this in the practice of making offerings, since we fell to the position of being deceitful above all things. 16 The things of creation stand in the position of Abel. Hence, through offering them we can go before God. To give another example, the universal tendency to seek out good leaders and righteous friends stems from our innermost desire to come before God through an able figure who is closer to God. By uniting with him, we can come closer to God ourselves. The Christian faith teaches us to be meek and humble. By this way of life, we may meet our able figure, and thus secure the way to go before God. In relationships at every level of society, from those between individuals to those at the level of families, communities, societies, nations and the world, we find that one party is in the role of Abel and the other is in the role of Cain. In order to restore society at each level to the state originally envisioned by God, those in the Cain position should respect and obey those in the Abel position. Jesus came to this world as the able figure, to whom all of humanity should have submitted and followed. For this reason, he said, "No one comes to the Father but by me." 17. If Cain had yielded to Abel, and thus fulfilled the indemnity condition to remove the fallen nature in Adam's family. They would have established the foundation of substance. Together with the foundation of faith already laid, Adam's family would have established the foundation for the Messiah. The Messiah would then have come to them and restored the original four-position foundation. Instead, Cain killed Abel. In murdering Abel, Cain repeated the sin of the Archangel. That is, he reenacted the very process which had given rise to the primary characteristics of the fallen nature. Adam's family thus failed to lay the foundation of substance. Consequently, God's providence of restoration through Adam's family could not be fulfilled.